Hello again, Vince here from Hudson Bonsai. I've got another azalea here in the workshop today. It's a pretty good size one. The story behind this tree is I bought this tree, I guess it was 3 years ago in the fall when, or I guess late summer, that kind of time when azaleas go on clearance, usually at garden centers and stuff. And this wasn't a super healthy tree, but it had a big huge trunk on it, and it's kind of a mess in the branches, but I thought, hey, I can make something out of that. And it really kind of had a rough winter that year, and the spring of the following year I assumed this tree was dead. It had no leaves on it at all. I could see frost damage on the trunk, and I just left it there sitting in its nursery container. A few months later, when I was getting ready to toss it on the compost pile, I noticed a few little green buds popping out. So I took it out of that nursery container and I kind of cleared a lot of the soil off of the roots, and I put it in this big terracotta container and packed sphagnum moss around it. That's something I had never done before, but I had seen videos and talk on the internet about saving a tree that way, and I thought, hey, I'll give it a try. And whether it would work more often, I'm not sure, but it seems to have worked pretty well on this tree. So now I think it recovered last year, and I haven't touched it so far this year other than just to deadhead it and remove the flowers, which I had never seen the flowers until this year even, and they were a quite beautiful kind of dark pink with a white center. I'm not sure what the variety of this thing is, but this year it's looking pretty good. I think there's still, the trunk has a lot of damage on it, and there's two trunks, really big fat trunks, that are starting to fuse together, which I'm okay with. And dead wood on the trunk of an azalea isn't necessarily something that you want, but this tree has it, and I'm not going to give up on it just because of that. I think it can still be a nice looking tree. Maybe in time it'll just add character to the trunk. It's callousing over pretty well. Maybe eventually you won't even be able to tell. There's a pretty big major branch over here that I'm going to have to remove because it's completely dead. There's a few more stubs that are dead, and then I'm going to just look inside and try to do some cleanup on the structure of this thing today, and hopefully in a few years it'll actually be looking pretty good. Alright, so first thing I'm going to go ahead and take off are these little suckers down here at the base. Just take those right off, nice and clean to the trunk. I'll use these for cuttings. And then we come to this large branch here that's completely dead. And try to initially cut it off with the saw, and then maybe go back and nip at it a little bit with the knob cutter. Okay. That was completely dead, and I don't appear to have hit any live tissue around the outside of this. I'm going to go ahead and take my knob cutters and just bite into that a little bit more. Try to contour it a little bit into the shape of the trunk. Now I'm starting to hit along the edges where there is some actively growing tissue. I want this scar to kind of heal as seamlessly as possible. Okay, I think that's got that pretty good. Another completely dead stub here. Take that off. You know, I kind of cut right back to, or very close to the living tissue to encourage that to heal over. This tree really is quite a mess on the inside. I've never touched this tree before. I've never pruned it because it really wasn't, it has never been healthy enough. A dead branch on the inside. There's quite a few dead stubs where I had just snipped off dead branches that I could see that first year when it was starting to recover. And a lot of those branches have just either died completely or died back a bit. See there. This branch, I'm going to go ahead and remove some of these upward growing shoots. did at the tip of this. And this is where one of the two living branches from this second trunk here is crossing this other trunk, and it's definitely started to fuse with the other trunk, and it's got a junction there that has three branches. These two kind of stubby low branches that I do actually kind of like. And then there's a branch, oh, that's not even it, here, that's growing kind of straight up. So I think this is the one I'm going to get rid of. Though on the branch beside it, there's going to be some tough decisions in here. There's some pretty weird stuff going on. The branch is turning right around and growing back towards the center. I'm going to take that one out. This is also, I think, more of a 3 right there. Take that off. And cut the stub back a bit more. Real thin, kind of a sucker coming up right here that's also in that large junction of branches. Take that off. Some little dead stubs here. Little dead twigs. Might be getting time to start thinking about a front for this tree. I'm trying to make these decisions of which branches I want to keep. I don't usually have this much trouble making pruning decisions like this, but this tree is so unusual that I'm kind of hesitant to make the same kind of objective decisions that I normally would, and try to make this tree into something that it's never going to be. It is pretty wild and crazy, and I don't think I'll ever be able to make this a real formal bonsai, at least not in any kind of reasonable amount of time. And I don't know that really want to do that. I kind of like how wild and crazy it is. Move on, work back a little bit from the tips and see if that helps me out at all making my decisions. Alright, so I come to a big whirl here. So far I'm mostly just removing the old pruning stubs and any little dead twigging from last year. There's not really a whole hell of a lot of ramification here at the ends that needs to be dealt with. It's all actually kind of spaced pretty well, not growing in whorls. These two branches here are very much on top of each other. I'm going to go ahead and remove this one. Very awkward spot this stub is in. After cutting that, okay, that's pretty good. Now towards these tips in the back, it's getting to the point where there's a few too many shoots at the end of some of these branches. Still some dead stubs. I'll be repotting this tree next spring, and I'll put it into a more suitable container, and I'll pot it into a mix of 90% konuma and 10% pumice. So that's pretty much what I use for all azaleas. Konuma is a Japanese substrate that's used exclusively for azaleas. It's kind of a yellow, chalky, particle. You know, it's not dust, it's aggregate, and it's mildly acidic. Azaleas like that. It also is pretty soft, so the little fine roots of the azalea can grow right into the particles. But when you're using konuma, you do have to repot fairly often because of the fact that it does break down, and you know, then you're going to lose your drainage and aeration in the pot when that konuma starts to break down into dust. There's a few more things here I'm going to remove. I'm going to take this vertical growing branch right here off. It has begun to fuse with the main trunk. Okay. You kind of see there where it had begun to actually fuse in and attach itself to the other trunk, which is cool and okay, but it really wasn't going in a place that I need a branch. I have this, you know, kind of poor little branch here, but to me this is coming from a good spot, and I'd rather keep it. So let's just see if there's anything else. Do actually have one more tree there. I removed two other branches that I believe were just dead there. And this one is crossing a branch that I want to keep. I'm going to go ahead and just take that off too. And I'm just cut into that little bit there. Little black and white jumping spider. Still unsure of the front of this tree. I really kind of see this branch as being the apex, or maybe this bit and this bit. I kind of don't like this branch here. Growing very straight up. It's trying to occupy the same space as that branch, which also I suppose isn't a fantastic branch unless this is the apex, and maybe in time I remove this and this and shorten these branches, but these will all be horizontal branches, this being the apex, and this being, now this could actually occupy some lower space or even be a second apex with the you know, with the form of this tree that is just as wild and crazy as it is, multiple apexes might be okay, you know, different heights. Is sort of a clump style. I think the last thing I'm going to do with this tree today is, as far as pruning is concerned, is just take back some of these longer bits. You know, again here I have a branch that's just growing vertical. I don't need that. Tempted to remove this whole section, but I think this branch is a bit too vertical. It's not causing a problem at the moment, so I'm going to leave it. As I said in the beginning, I really am not making real style decisions on this tree yet. Just trying to get it into a shape that it can continue to grow and develop into something is nice, and also, you know, at the same time, it is a very just kind of wild and crazy looking tree, and I'm not sure that I want to ruin that. By trying to make it conform, you know, into a real formal shape. Some of last year's leaves still left on here. They're yellowing. They'll just fall off on their own. Looks a little nicer if you actually pluck them off. So I think that's about it for this tree, other than, you know, I actually would like to peel back some of this moss on the trunk. You really don't want moss actually growing on the trunk. All it's going to do is ruin the bark, rot it away. Plus, it's just hiding the surface roots, or what surface roots there is. But I do think that this tree actually has a fairly decent base under here. You can see there, the roots come out quite a ways. It's not perfect. But it is a good start. I don't want it to just get spoiled from leaving this moss here. liverwort growing here. I don't know if you know what liverwort is, but I've only had it the past few years. I must have brought it in with something, and it's a real pain. It's not bad looking when it's in tiny patches, but eventually it'll cover the whole surface, and it makes watering very difficult because it just creates this like mat of these very rubbery kind of leaves that just, you know, just block the water from going down into the soil, and it gets ugly, and it grows these weird little fruits, I guess you'd call them, on it, where the spores come out of. I wish I had gotten rid of it the first time I saw it, but I didn't know what it was, and I thought it was kind of interesting looking, and I just left it, and it's just gone wild. Picking it off is pretty effective, or you take a paintbrush and some vinegar and just paint it with that vinegar, and it'll die, and then it's even easier to peel off. It'll also kill any moss that you put it on. So if you're worried about killing your moss, you're better off just picking it off. So that's got most of it off. I'm going to grab a toothbrush and try to scrape as much as I can off. It's really a shame that this tree had fallen on such hard times. It really could have been quite nice by now. There's quite a big root base here. Not perfect by any means, but it's really not too bad for a nursery stock tree. And it hasn't had any real root work done to it. Like I said, I only, when I first realized that it was still alive and it was just in mucky old nursery soil, I removed most of that, then put it into the sphagnum moss, and but I didn't really prune the roots. I just kind of tried to gently get as much of the soil off of it as I could. I figured it was pretty much dead, and I just thought I would, you know, try drastic action on it. And it seems to have worked pretty well. In the next couple of years of repottings and pruning these roots down here, you may end up with a fairly nice base on it. There's all that frost damage where bits of the live vein died away that, you know, probably caused most of the branch death. But I don't know, I think in the end I might end up with something with some really kind of unusual character to it. It's by no means a perfect tree, but I'm gonna keep working at it. So the last thing I'm gonna do is get my wound sealer and put that on there. I'll show you that. Alright, so especially this is quite a large wound. So I'm gonna be using the putty on there. Get some roughly on. Wet this piece of bamboo that I'm using. I don't like touching any of this stuff with my bare fingers. I don't think anybody should. There's most of these purpose-made cut sealers have the same, you know, growth hormone that's in rooting powder. And I just don't think that that's something that you want to be handling with your bare hands. So stuff is very sticky, except for things that are wet. So you don't want to have any water underneath where you're putting it. That's why I used the one end of the chopstick to put it in, or the piece of bamboo, to put it on dry, and then I wet the other end just to smooth it out. There's another pretty big cut right here. Treat that one the same way. Get enough on. And then use the end that I've wet to just spread it out. Try to make contact with all the edges of the cut. There's another large cut right there. big cut where I used the saw to remove that really difficult branch on the inside. So there's quite a few major cuts made on this tree, but there's still a fair amount of foliage on it, and in all reality this azalea is pretty healthy right now, and it could more than likely handle being completely defoliated and all these big branches cut back, but I want to reduce the foliage as little as I can so that that'll help all these big wounds to actually heal. The tree needs to be vigorous to be able to heal this kind of damage. So once a lot of these big wounds are healed up and the tree is growing vigorously, then I'll look at beginning to really style this tree and design what it's going to look like. Right now I'm just trying to fix flaws or problems, things I don't like about the tree, and get it really healthy and vigorous so that I can take more drastic action on it. Pack some in where I removed that branch that was fusing itself to the trunk. I'm looking now, wondering if I need this branch. Just spotted another large cut that I forgot about on the underside of this branch. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video. I got all the cuts sealed up. I've taken pretty much, look at that, one more. Pretty much everything that I wanted to off. I think this is going to eventually be kind of a cool tree. Maybe not quite traditional, but you know, just kind of a wild, odd looking tree, but I think it has some potential, and I'm pretty happy with what I accomplished today. It's going to need a lot more work, but for now it's just going to go back outside. I may revisit it later on in the year, but otherwise it's just going to be allowed to grow, be fed, and then next spring, as I said, it'll be repotted, and after it flowers I'll, you know, deadhead it and go back in and do some more pruning, maybe do a little bit more actual shaping. But I think this tree has some real potential. Thanks for watching. Bye.